This is part 4 of chapter 2, so let's get on with it. So the last time we had left off at the subtopic of administering the empire. So I was telling you that there are five major political centers in the empire. First being obviously the central capital, which was Patliputra. Apart from that, so Patliputra you can compare it with present day New Delhi. Apart from that, other provincial centers were Takshashila, Ujjaini, Toshali, and Swarnagiri. So each of these centers were important for each of the directions. Like one was in south, one was in north. Like Ujjaini is in south, Takshila is in north, Toshali, Swarnagiri similarly. So this is how people used to divide the entire state into various provinces and use them as the controlling points for the entire empire. Now historians have found out one important feature about all these areas is that they all have the similar kind of Ashokan inscriptions, and virtually they seem to have same message engraved on it in the entire Mauryan Empire landmass. So again, the historians had to ask this question, that whether there was a uniform administrative system in this entire area which belonged to Mauryan Empire. So after carefully studying various information available, so the historians have come to the conclusion that expecting that there was a uniform administrative system in this entire landmass is a little bit too faulty, because the entire region is very diverse. They are very different from each other, so we cannot expect that all this entire area had the same administrative system. But what we can conclude, or what we can expect out of it, is that probably the administrative control was strongest in area around the capital. Like for example, around Patliputra, whatever area was lying on the fringes of Patliputra, probably that area was the most strictly controlled part of the Mauryan Empire. Similarly for other centers, but as we moved away from these centers, the control might have weakened. Now, all these centers have been selected quite strategically by the rulers. Now, first of all, Takshashila and Ujjaini, they lay on the long distance trade routes, and that is why they had prospered, they had earned riches, and that is why they become extremely popular. Apart from that, Swarnagiri, it is basically Golden Mountain. It is possibly because it used to give access to the gold mines of the southern India, and that is why Swarnagiri rose to such importance. Apart from that, there is also communication, which played a vital role for the existence of the empire, so that there can be proper provisioning of the empire. There was proper information flow from one part to the other, which is extremely crucial for the maintenance of any kind of empire. Apart from that, there was also a very strong army that was maintained by the Mauryan rulers. And for the army, Megasthenes have given us information that the army entirely was divided into five committees, which was coordinating the military activity. Now these five committees, you have to remember, each committee used to deal with a particular area or field. Like there was one committee dealing with the chariots, another committee dealing with the elephants. So all these five committees used to deal with different aspects of the army. Last point is the Dhamma. Now Dhamma, I have already told you, it is nothing more than a moral code which was launched by Ashoka so that he can see uniformity and unity in his empire. So this is basically a simple set of rules that people should follow, so that people can feel united to each other in all aspects in their behavior. So this is about the administering the empire. So now the next subtopic is, how important was this empire really for the Indian subcontinent? Now, as you know, that during the colonial era, all the Britishers, they came to India and they believed that they are culturally and racially more superior than all of us Indians. So obviously, when the fact that there existed an empire as huge and as popular as Mauryan Empire, it added to the glory of the India's history, and Indians started believing that there is no way we are inferior to any other race. So it added a sense of pride among the Indians that no matter what British people say, or whatever has been said about India's race, but India has had equally important vast empires which are extremely popular around the land, especially the information that the modern empires also even had contacts with the Greek kings, made or added to the importance of that Indian modern empire. Apart from that, the search or the finding of archaeological sculptures, it also added to the fact that it was a very spectacular and typical kind of empire, and it was pretty different from what we have seen until now. We have found grandiose titles, that is very pompous titles being used by the kings, which also shows that Indian rulers were extremely loved by the common masses, and they were being supported by the common masses. So this information that there existed such a large empire in India's history, this boosted the morale of the historians and the nationalist leaders, so that they can give examples to the British leaders that whatever you say, we know that India's history is pretty rich and we are in comparison to you no less. So this is what it added to the history of India, that nationalist leaders started feeling a sense of pride towards India's history. But yet, how important was the modern empire? Now every point has a certain criticism attached to it. Now whatever we have said just now, it can be criticized by adding 2 points. That first of all, this empire was only it flourished only for 150 years, that it could last only for 150 years. So this is the first criticism, that if this empire was so huge and so popular among the masses, then how come it only lasted for 150 years, which is not a very long time for any great empire. Plus, apart from that, this empire did not encompass the entire Indian subcontinent. It is only a small part of the subcontinent which was held by the Mauryan Empire. Plus, the administrative system was not uniform. Again, we have already seen in the previous subtopic that it cannot be believed that the entire area under the Mauryan Empire had a uniform administrative system, because we have had evidences of a large diversity between various regions. Now, next important point is that even if this empire was very large and it was pompous, but still it could not suppress the rising of new chiefdoms or new kingdoms around its empires or around its boundaries. So any such empire which is very huge, it should always suppress other empires for from taking importance in the region. But Mauryan empire could not help it, and there was obviously emergence of other revolting parties or other dynasties around the boundaries of the Mauryan Empire. So this can be said that even though Mauryan Empire holds a lot of importance in the history of India, but yet we can criticize it by saying that there was no uniformity, there was not a very large empire area under it, even if it was powerful, but still it could not suppress the emergence of new chiefdoms and kingdoms around its boundary. Now the next topic is the new notions of kingship. Now, chiefs and kings in the south. Now, this topic suggests that there are many new powers that were emerging in the areas around the Mauryan Empire. Like, for example, in the Deccan part or in the south, there were three empires which emerged. First is the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas. So these three empires emerged in an area called Tamilakam. Tamilakam is basically few parts of present day Andhra Pradesh, present day Kerala, and the entire Tamil Nadu. So this entire empire, which is the southernmost part of India, has seen emergence of three largest empires which were contemporary to the Mauryan Empire, and these are the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. And these have added a lot to the cultural prosperity of the southern India of that time. So therefore, even though these three empires were at loggerheads with each other, but yet they have led to a lot of cultural advancement in the southernmost part of India. And this, the evidence which we have regarding their history is through the books called the Sangam texts. Now Sangam is nothing but basically an assembly that these people or these rulers used to hold, and there was writing or compilation of text or poems during that time. So these Sangam texts have given us information about about the existence of these three empires and how advanced they were culturally at that time. Apart from that, Western India used to have a dynasty called Satavahanas during the 2nd century BCE. Plus, there was infiltration by a Central Asian origin tribe which is called the Shakas, which established in its kingdom in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, and it basically undertook the long distance trade with the Indian subcontinent. So now we are going to end it up here, and we'll meet in the next part with another subtopic. So please stay tuned.